Welcome to Ask Me Anything. Your chance to ask the IT Pro TV subject matter experts questions live. Here's your host, Ronnie Wong.
Hello and welcome to Ask Me Anything. This is a chance where you, of course, get to interact with, our subject matter experts right here on IT Pro TV. So we're glad that you've joined us today as we get a brand new show on the way. And of course, today we have Ms. Jo Peacock with us. Jo is an expert. I'm just going to say an expert. Okay, let's put it that way. She is an expert in all of our process management, as well as the idea, of course, of project management. And there's a lot of different things that she's been involved in over the years that we are glad to have her right here on the IT Pro TV team. So, Jo, welcome. How are you doing today?
Great to be here, Ronnie. How are you?
I am doing well, Jo. As we start in this next round of different questions that are actually available, this is great because even throughout the week, as we've led up to this show, there's been several ITIL questions that have come in and several, of course, PMP questions that have come in. So, Jo, you are leading our particular tally at this point in terms of number of questions that are coming in. So you are very popular.
Well, I don't think it's me that's popular.
Oh.
I'll be honest with you. I think it's more the fact that both ITIL and the PMP are hot topics right now. And that is because both ITIL's due for an update at the time of this recording. I mean, we're in July 2018. ITIL's due for an update very, very soon. And of course, PMP has just been updated. And here at IT Pro TV, I've just released the PMP updated course content as well. So, yeah, they're both hot topics right now.
Yeah, it really is an exciting field and a great time since they are actually due for the updates. And right as the updates have come out, Jo, like she just said, in terms of PNP, has updated our content, and that has also helped out as we get started here too. So, Jo, because there's so many questions that are actually waiting, what do you say? We jump right in and start taking a look at some of the questions.
I think that's probably a good idea.
All right, Jo, well, let's get started with our very first question here that's been submitted. We have Darius that's asked, where can I go to get supplementary resources on ITIL framework in the manufacturing industry? I work for a company that makes and sells tile. I do not know how to provide that service in that provide a service in that type of environment. So, Jo, fairly good question here.
It's kind of a broad question,
Yes.
isn't it? You know, it's one of those where you probably first look at that and think, oh, how am I going to answer that? Well, I mean, my first instinct is always to say, well, look, in ITIL, we like the use of complementary information, and you can find complementary information anywhere on the internet. The internet's a great place to go. But what you're going to get on the internet, you've got to bear in mind, is somebody else's opinion. And unless you actually go to the AskSMEAnything website, and the AskSMEAnything website is going to give you the information about the ITIL framework itself, or the ITIL service management framework. But the internet is going to give you somebody else's opinion. So where else do you go? Well, the simple fact of the matter is, somebody else's opinion, or the internet, Google, whatever you want, whatever browser you use, is always going to give you a lot of useful information. You've just got to make sure that you discount the information that's not relevant to you. In terms of a manufacturing industry, I have to say that ITIL started out way back in the 1980s as a result of government needing to demonstrate that they were making most efficient and effective use of taxpayers' money, and were being impartial in the use of taxpayers' money as well. The principles are based on efficiency and effectiveness. So let's think about this. Logically, then, the manufacturing industry is actually going to benefit hugely from efficiency savings. Of course they are. And what we found is, over the years as ITIL has evolved, that the framework itself, the service management framework itself is it's geared towards displaying efficiency. And that's what we actually want to achieve, is we want to deliver value to our business and to our customers, but in an efficient way. And efficiency means minimal waste. And so, of course, and manufacturing, we want minimal waste because we want to deliver as high a quality as product. It doesn't matter whether you're manufacturing tiles, or whether you're manufacturing pens, or whether you're manufacturing bricks. At the end of the day, you want to deliver a good quality product, but with as minimal waste as possible. generally for as little outlay as you possibly can. Now, I've mentioned ITIL right now, and of course the question referred to ITIL as well, but I also want to bring in some of the other service management frameworks too. And SIAM's not necessarily, relevant for this particular question, although it could be if you are dealing with many suppliers. But when we talk about Verisma, or VeriSM, it depends on sort of who you talk to as to how they pronounce it. This is a framework that's a relatively new framework, and it's something that I am planning on releasing a series about once we get through. At the moment, we're recording the Prince 2 Practitioner series, and then I'm going to take a look at Agile Scrum Master, and then we're going to get on to the VeriSM framework itself. And what that does is that takes the ITIL-based framework, it takes a service management framework and expands it into the organization. So it expands it into best practices for business. It's like I just said, with ITIL, we're looking at efficiency. And efficiency can be applied to absolutely anything. And in fact, you want to apply it to your organization. Now, I'm not too sure whether that's exactly what was meant by that question, and perhaps it wasn't. So if we could just go back to the question again, just to refresh everybody what that question was. And the question says, if I remember rightly, I think Ronnie's got a copy of that question somewhere.
Yeah, it's where can I get supplementary resources on ITIL framework in the manufacturing industry?
Right.
Yeah, and then I work for a company that makes and sells tiles. I do not know how to provide a service in that type of environment.
Right. So what he's perhaps looking for as well, and I just want to, and this is why I wanted to answer this twofold, really, because what he is perhaps looking for is he's looking for the delivery of IT services in the manufacturing industry. Well, let's think about the types of IT services there are in manufacturing, because you've got the traditional the traditional services like sort of web-based services and sales, ordering, processing of payments, etc. You've got marketing, you've got websites. You also have, though, in a manufacturing industry, you have then the factory-based services. Let's face it, there's nothing anymore. We're in the 21st century that doesn't have some element of IT in it. So that means all of the actual manufacturing tools themselves, the production lines, they're all controlled by IT. And as such, they would be considered service or a service or many services. So where do we start? Well, we start by defining exactly what our services are. And as for obtaining complementary information, well, I can't give you exactly the advice relating to you because I don't understand enough about your organization. But I'd certainly tell you to take a look at white papers that were available on the internet, and there's plenty of them freely available. And of course, here at IT Pro TV, I'm always happy to help with any specific questions that you may have. But in terms of, the difficulty that you'll have defining a service, think of a service in terms of the value that it provides to your business, and in terms of the outputs that your business provides to the customers. So what I mean by that is that your business provides tiling to external customers. So that's an output. Well, what services do you provide to facilitate that? You must provide a service that makes a tile. You must provide another service, which you might consider as another tool, for instance, but you must provide and support another service that prints designs on the tile. You must also provide another service that probably then moves the tile from each tool to the next tool, and then from the last tool into boxes and packages them, etc. Each one of these would be considered a service. And each one of these would be components of the entire service as a whole. In other words, the entire service delivery to your organization. Because without any single one of those components, you wouldn't be able to manufacture or deliver a tile to the customer. So there are many different types of service. There are the manufacturing services, and there are also the traditional IT services that are, intranet based. Any one of those, without them, your organization won't be able to function, even including the ones, the sales services and the payment processing. And so start off, first of all, by defining what services you actually deliver. Remember, a service is a means of delivering value by facilitating an outcome. And as I've already said, an outcome in this instance is a tile. And so work out what services you actually have that facilitate that outcome.
Yeah, I can understand a little bit of the confusion, at least at some times, where somebody that's been working, let's say, strictly outside of the manufacturing industry may think that IT services within the manufacturing industry is different. And maybe that's why they're asking for some type of supplementary material that's saying, is there something like that? So let me put it in a different perspective. Does Axelos, whom I'm assuming is the official provider of the ITIL material, okay, do they have anything that's just specific for the manufacturing industry's uh, IT services? I wouldn't think that they would, but maybe that's what we're trying to get at here.
No, they
Oh,
don't.
okay.
No. And what ITIL will tell you, what Axelos will tell you is, in fact, that ITIL has got to be adapted as a
Right.
framework, but it's got to be adopted to suit any individual organization. I mean, you might want to use the word tailored as well.
Right.
It's about, it really is about creating efficient processes. We're not going to tell you what your processes should look like, but what we are going to tell you is that you need to have those processes. I like to think of it as, we're going to give you a box of Lego bricks. That's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a box of building bricks, and what you have got to do is you've got to piece it together and construct a house from those Lego bricks. Now, I can't tell you what your house is going to look like, but I can tell you that it's going to need 4 walls, and it's going to need at least 1 door, maybe 2. It's going to need some windows, and it's going to need a roof. Right, there you go. So that's your framework. I can tell you what you need, but what it looks like is completely up to you. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to service management frameworks, whether it's ITIL, whether it's Verismo, whether it's SIAM, one of the biggest mistakes they make is to actually think that what's in a book is plug and play.
Right.
It is not plug and play. It's not one size fits all. What it is a framework. And like I said, we're going to give you a box full of Lego, and it's up to you to use that Lego to construct a house out of it. So it's up to you to take the examples that we've given you in the framework, in the Axelos books, and you're going to adapt them to suit your environment. Now, another thing that I just want to mention on that one is, because quite often it's a question that's asked of me is, well, where do I start then? And I would take a look at, in our course library, we've got an ITIL practitioner guidance. I would really take a look at that, because in the ITIL practitioner guidance, we talk about how we identify pain points, how we start implementing ITIL, and how we start to tailor a process to meet our needs and our specific needs in our organization, whatever the organization may be. So I would definitely recommend that we take a look at that ITIL practitioner guidance, and that should help you along. And like I said just a little while ago, I'm always here. So feel free to ask another question.
All right, Jo. Well, thank you again for helping us. And don't forget, do check out the ITIL library that we are currently building with Jo's help here, the official or authorized ITIL training that you can get right here at IT Pro TV, because it's actually worth every single moment that you spend in it to learn more about this idea of service management and process management. You're going to, get better at whatever you do, and you're going to learn the proper way to do it according to ITIL as well. Okay. Now, speaking of that, we have, of course, another question, since I said there's so many that we are ready for. Are you ready for a second question?
Why not? Let's go.
All
for
right.
it.
So this one, Iva, okay. What are the benefits of having an ITIL certification? Now, I don't know that I don't think that they mean to be denigrating here. What I think is going on is maybe they're trying to figure out, like, between certifications, is there is this a benefit for me to also choose as well? So what's your perspective
Well,
on
you know
this?
what? You wouldn't believe that this is actually a really, really common question to
Yeah.
get asked.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry too much about whether that's sort of denigrating ITIL at all, because this is just such a common question. In classes around the world, and it doesn't matter what classroom I've walked into, I have somebody in front of me always that has turned up because they've been told to. Not because they want to, but because they've been told they
Right.
have to do it, because the organization's implementing a service management framework and they've been told that they've got to attend. And so the first thing I've got to do is really answer the question. And the question is simply, what's in it for me? Now, What are the benefits? It's difficult without knowing what country you're in, and I'm going to admit that because if you were in the UK, for instance, having an ITIL Foundation certificate on your CV or your resume is a prerequisite to any job in IT. And if you don't have an ITIL Foundation certificate, then quite simply you're not even going to make a shortlist. And it's as simple as that. And I can be as blunt as that about the UK. Now over here in the US where we're based, I wouldn't say that ITIL is, it's not as widespread. It's not as commonly understood in the sort of the IT world as it is, say, in Europe. Now, that said, it's becoming more and more widely accepted. And yet again, having an ITIL accreditation on your resume here in the States means that you will be shortlisted for a job. And I've seen more and more job adverts, commercials, whatever you want to call them, out there now that simply are stating that a prerequisite is an ITIL certification. And now it's pretty much getting to the same way as it is in Europe, where, they're not even asking for an ITIL foundation. It's accepted that everybody has an ITIL foundation now, and they're asking for an ITIL intermediate, which is one of the more advanced certifications. So what's the benefit? Well, ultimately, it's going to get you a foot in the door of an organization where otherwise you might not have been considered. Is it going to get you any better pay rise? Is it going to make you, you're going to get more money from having an ITIL certification? Well, you know what? That one I cannot answer because I simply just do not know. It really depends on the organization because, as I say, most organizations now are saying without it, you're not even getting in the door, let alone getting an enhanced salary. If you have an ITIL expert certification, there was a school of thought a few years ago when the certification sort of first came out, which actually is more than a few years ago now, it's about 10 years ago. There was a school of thought that you could add an extra few £1,000s to your salary by having an ITIL, expert certification. But you see, the thing is that as these certifications become more prolific, then obviously the benefits of having something in terms of, salary benefits, well, they become kind of less and less because everybody's got one. So from a personal perspective, it's going to get you a foot in the door. Now, the other thing that it's going to do, though, and these are, that's what you can consider to be a tangible benefit, but there are also intangible benefits as well. The ones that are really, really difficult to get your head around. But there's a reason why why employers will ask for an ITIL certification on a CV or on a resume, and that is simply that when you attend an ITIL course, when you're looking at an ITIL series, when you have that accreditation, what it's proved to the potential employer is that you understand the language. That means a huge amount to any potential employer. There was a time many, many years ago where anybody that's coming into an organization would have to go through some form of orientation, and that would tell them that, right, okay, this is our help desk or our service desk, and this is where they sit, and this is the sort of things that they do, and this is where our development team sit, and this is the sort of thing that they do, and this is where our sales team sit, and this is the sort of thing that they do. Well, guess what? If you've walked into an organization and you have an ITIL certification, then if that organization is looking for the certification, it's because they have a framework in place already themselves. So now they don't have to explain all of that to you because now you know. So when they say this is where the service desk is, then that's all they need to say. They don't need to take you through that orientation. What you automatically know is that because that's where the service desk sits, that's where incident management happens. That's where they raise problems. That's where they'll deal with request fulfillment. That's where they will also be potentially taking requests for access. They'll also potentially be monitoring events as well. They will be dealing with escalations too. And they will be doing some service level target monitoring also. So they'll be working for service level management, and they'll be updating the configuration management database on behalf of asset and configuration management. You know that because you've got that certification, and nobody has to explain that to you. And then when you're sitting in your day-to-day work and you have an email that's just been sent to you, for instance, that says that, oh, well, this person has a problem, you understand exactly what's meant by a problem. You're not thinking about an incident, you're immediately thinking about a problem. And what that means is I've got to find what went wrong. I've got to find the root cause. So you have that common language as well. And obviously, I've already mentioned efficiency, and that's exactly what it is. It's about efficiency. You know, we can bring somebody into an organization and we don't have to spend a lot of time on giving them an orientation. This is not about the fact that we don't want to train you. Don't get me wrong, but this is about the fact that we know that you're going to be a good fit into the organization and you're going to be less disruptive to those that are already working. And so, yes, there are huge benefits to having this certification. Is it going to get you an extra $10,000 in your salary? Probably not. Not anymore.
You crushed my dreams.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Ronnie. I really, really am. But yeah, it's probably not going to do that, but it's certainly going to get you in the door. Not having one, unfortunately, not having an ITIL certification on your resume now, you know, it doesn't matter what role you're going for in IT. If it's an IT-based role, then you really need to have ITIL Foundation as a minimum, because not having it, you're going to be at a disadvantage and probably not even shortlisted.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Joe, that the industry tends to be trending towards that idea that the ITIL certification is the foundation of what everything that we want to build is going to be built upon. So don't bypass this just because you don't understand the process. Getting to know this is going to help you fit into any organization in the world once you understand the common language that everybody wants you to understand as well.
And I can even tell you that, I mean, we've got teams here at IT Pro TV, and Ronnie will tell you this as well, that, you know, that they're sitting their ITIL Foundation certification. And it's got absolutely nothing to do with wanting to learn about IT, because they're not necessarily in IT themselves, but it's about understanding how IT teams are structured. It's about understanding who does what. It's about understanding where development sits and what they do and how they work, and where support teams sit and how support teams work, and how to, you know, how to perform good customer service as well. And so actually you don't even have to be in IT to be able to take an ITIL Foundation class and to be able to pass the exam.
All right, Joe, thank you again for helping us to understand that idea a little bit better in terms of the value of ITIL and to at least our own resumes as we have this. But we are also ready for another question. And don't forget, you have the hashtag AskMeAnything, and that means you can continue to submit your questions, and we will try and answer them even right here if we have the opportunity to do so. So we are now ready for another question for Joe. So Joe, Elena asked, how many certified people do I need to implement ITIL in my organization? All right, so Joe, this seems to be where the context thinks that there has to be at least one, but does there have to be any more than that?
Right, okay, wow, that's a question.
Yeah.
I mean, my first question back would be, well, how many people have you got in your IT organization? I
One.
mean, that's the first question. You know, if there's only you, then I guess one is the answer to that. You know, the simple answer is you don't need any. Let me put it this way, and this is the easiest way that I explain it to people when we're, especially from an ITIL Foundation perspective, is that anybody can pick up a book and read it.
Right.
Yeah, and anybody can. And of course, in ITIL, we're talking about a series of 5 books, and each one of those represents a life cycle phase when we look at the life of a service, of an IT service. Anybody can pick up a book and read it. But have you ever, Ronnie, and I know that this is a question that I ask people all the time, actually, have you ever read a book and then gone to the cinema and watched the movie?
I have.
Right. And what's your first thought when you sit down there and you watch that movie? Do you think to yourself, oh, that's exactly what's going on in my mind when I read the book? Or do you think to yourself, that's slightly different to what was in the book?
It's different.
And there's a reason for that. And that's because when you read the book, you put your own interpretation on it.
Right.
And when the producer or the director read the book, they put their interpretation on it. And you see, this is one of the challenges with ITIL, is that, yeah, you can read the book, but you're going to put your own interpretation on the book and on the theory behind the framework itself. And of course, what I'm here to do is to make sure that everybody walks away with exactly the same interpretation. Now, you don't have to have a certificate in order to be able to implement an ITIL-based framework, but what you do need to have is an understanding of the framework that you're implementing. So certainly the person that is looking to implement the framework needs to have an understanding of what it is they are trying to achieve. They don't need to be able to memorize an ITIL book from cover to cover. What they do need to be able to do is understand what is efficient and what delivers value in their organization. So they need to have an understanding of the ITIL framework itself, but they don't necessarily need a certificate. Now, as far as everybody else is concerned, what everybody else needs from a communication perspective, and this is really organizational change management, this is really about getting people on board and making sure that we don't have any resistance, and getting people to understand why we're implementing certain processes. And so what you do need within the organization is an awareness campaign to be run. This is what we're doing, and this is the reason why we're doing it. So we're implementing, say, incident management. This is what it's going to look like, and these are the benefits it's going to give us, and this is why we're doing it. So in terms of how many ITIL certifications do you need? Well, I'm going to say none, but you do need to have somebody who knows what they're doing in order to, define and configure the processes, and then obviously, conduct the awareness campaign.
All right, Jo. A lot of times people do get confused because they might think that there has to be a certain minimum requirement to have, some measure to do that. And I remember, like, for example, in a training company for like Cisco, right, a more technical field in terms of configuring things. If you wanted to be their authorized partner to do things, you had to have, one person that had this certification. You had to have another person that had this, another one that had the sales certification. And so maybe that's probably some of the thought. But it's hard to actually know sometimes depending on the organization. But I'm glad that you helped clarify that because it helps.
The other thing is, of course, is the fact that everybody's version of ITIL will look completely different. And so if we were to all create a film out of ITIL, it would be quite a strange film. But anyway, if we were all to create a film out of ITIL, then everybody's movie would look completely different.
Right.
And so there is no right or wrong. And I say this a lot when it comes to implementing an ITIL framework. What you have to do is ensure that you've got efficient processes that are also effective, that deliver value, that meet the needs of your organization. But you can't just simply plug and play, and so therefore there is no right or wrong. What there is the best fit for your organization. And so really it doesn't matter too much about the actual number of certificates, because you're not going to have a certificate in your implementation or in your version of ITIL. What you're going to have is a certificate in the framework, in the theory itself. So no, you don't need to certify 100% of the people in your organization. Put it that way.
All right, Jo. Well, thank you for helping us once again with that particular question. As we continue to move on, this is actually another great question that has popped up in our feed here. Cynthia says, I got my ITIL foundation back in 2003. Now, that was 15 years ago now, Jo. Do I need to, when you were just a mere babe?
Yeah, I was.
Ago, okay?
Yeah, right.
Do I need to retake it to take practitioner?
Yes.
All right.
Is the simple answer to that.
Okay, well, there we go.
So if you had your ITIL foundation in 2003, then that would have been a version 2 of ITIL. So that would have been the previous version. In fact, it was actually 2 previous iterations ago, because we had version 2 that came out in 97, and then version 3 came out in 2007, and then we've since had an upgrade to version 3, which was the 2011 version. It was still version 3, but it's version 3 2011. Now, during the transition period in sort of 2007 to 2008, there was a very short period in time when you could take what we called a bridging test or bridging exam. And a bridging exam just simply looked at the difference between version 2 and version 3, and that would give you then the version 3 foundation certificate. That was only available for a short period of time, and I think that was around about, and I could be wrong on this one, because I remember at the time actually having to deliver classes in both version 2 and in version 3 because some people still wanted version 2. That just makes me feel so old now, actually. But anyway, and so at the time, it was available for about maybe a year. It wasn't that popular. It really, really wasn't. And most people, because version 2 to version 3, there were quite a lot of differences. There were some significant differences, especially in the service strategy area, that it was decided that, the bridging exam would be taken away. And so people then had to go and take the version 3 foundation. Now, once you've taken version 3, your version 3 foundation applies to both version 3 and to 2011. So if you want to take an ITIL practitioner class, then you do need to retake your foundation. So you will need to, and you'll find that there are a lot of differences between version 2 and version 3. As I say, specifically in the strategy arena, version 2 was split into two areas. It was split into service delivery and service operations, and so, or service support. And so we did away with delivery and support, and we actually brought in the life cycle concept of strategy and then design and then transition. And so the service delivery arena, that looked at everything that we now have in service design and in some service transition as well. So we had processes in there that looked at availability management, capacity management, financial management from service strategy. They were all in the service delivery side of things. And then in the service support aspect, we had incident and problem, etc. Well, now, of course, we've taken a completely different approach. And so we have service strategy. We have in 2011, we have all of the processes. We've got 5 processes that fit in service strategy, and then we've got 8 in service design, and we've got 7 in service transition and 5 in service operation. And of course, we've brought in the concept of continual service improvement as a different life cycle phase itself. And so the number of processes has increased, and also the way that we look at some of the processes as well has changed. And certainly in version 2, which is what you took, we put a lot of emphasis on financial management in foundation. So you looked at cost models and you looked at cost types, and there was a lot of emphasis in that. Now in version 3 foundation, we don't tend to go into that much detail at all because we've got a lot more other things to cover. So you will find that when you watch the foundation series and when you take your version 3 2011 certificate exam, you'll find that it is actually completely different to version 2 in a lot of ways.
All right, Jo. Well, that at least helps us and helps somebody out there to kind of think about the idea here that, yes, if they've already gotten that previous version, that upgrading to the current version is probably the way to go before trying to head into an upper level type of exam.
Kind of felt a bit like a history lesson there, didn't it?
No, that's, yeah. But we do understand that we do need that, okay? All right, Jo, we have another question that is ready for us to also take a look at as well. Josh has actually asked, what's in the pipeline for governance training in the future? And do you have any timescales? All right, Jo, here it is. We're about to test out your project management skills right away.
Oh, wow.
All right, so Jo, here we go.
Do we have any timescales? Yeah. Everybody wants everything right now. I think I already mentioned. I already mentioned a little earlier on that we have got right now. I'm working on the Prince 2 practitioner certification. And by the way, I just want to point out, and I know that this is something that we've alluded to, but everything that we're doing in the governance track is accredited. By the way, it's accredited by examining boards. So, the ITIL stream is accredited by PeopleCert. All of our materials accredited by PeopleCert. Certainly the project management stream, well, we've got accredited PMP certification when we look at Prince 2, and that's also accredited by PeopleCert. Then we look at, the other streams that we're looking at, Agile. Our foundation, our fundamentals is a BCS test. That's a British Computer Society Society, or ISEB. We also have then, we're looking at SIAM, which is accredited by EXIN. And so all of the materials that we're producing in the governance stream are fully accredited to examining boards, which means that you are able to watch the series and to then go and take the tests online afterwards. You don't have to go and sit through another class. And so this really does mean that, these aren't just top-up series, what we're doing. We are actually producing fully accredited series. And because of that, and I wanted to throw that in there because, you see, it makes it a little bit longer from the process from me compiling a slide deck, for instance, to me being able to deliver the show and us to get it published. It takes a little bit longer than for some of the non-accredited shows that we do, and that's purely because we have to submit the material, and we also have to submit the series to the examining board to get it accredited before we can actually release it to the public. And in order to retain that accreditation, we've got to make sure that we've got everything right. So that doesn't answer the question, but I just wanted to say this is the reason why it takes so long to get everything out. So as I said, we're doing Prince 2 Practitioner right now. As soon as that has achieved its accreditation, then that will be out for you. Then we have Agile Scrum Master. That's next on my agenda. Now that will be accredited to EXIN like our other Agile series that we have. Then we're looking at Verisma or VeriSM, which again will be fully accredited to EXIN. Now, I also know that I have had requests for CMMI and for COBIT as well, and TOGAF too. So yeah, they're all in the pipeline as well as, I mean, my aim is, this is my ambition, by the way, but I'm an ambitious person. My aim is to, if we were to take a look at, because I also have management of risk on my radar as well. That's something that I really want to do. We want to get some risk management out there. We've also done organizational change management, and we've also got ISO 20000, and again, fully accredited. So my aim is really to if we were to take a look at the PeopleCert website and we were to take a look at the EXIN website, they're all on my radar. Absolutely everything there is on my radar. Does that mean you're going to get it next week? No, because I'm one person and I can't deliver everything, even though I'd absolutely want to tomorrow. But if you do have any specific requests, if there's something that is desperately sort of burning away at you, then please, we have actually on our website, we do have a request facility. There is the option there for you to make a request for a particular course or a particular series. Now, and the way that works is that you'll submit a request, and then it's voted for. And so the more votes that we get, then the sooner it moves up our pipeline. Now, as Ronnie can attest, we all have our own specialisms here, or specialities. See, that was me being British there.
That's right.
But we all have our own specialisms here. And so, I specialize in governance track, and Ronnie is our absolute whiz at networking and Cisco. And yes, you are. Go on, admit it.
No.
And so, we all have our own track that we take a look at. And so, if I have, even if, say, for instance, there was a Verisma request, and it only had, say, maybe 100 votes, but you had one that had 1,000 votes that was above mine on the course request list, mine would still get done because that would be my most important one. So it doesn't matter what you see on the course request list, still put your request in there, because you might actually find that it's at the top of somebody's list anyway.
There's no doubt, Joe. That's actually very important for everybody right here at IT Pro TV, that we respond to the needs of our members, and we're glad that we do have that course request list as well. Okay. All right, Joe, that brings us to our final question, and we're actually out of the ITIL track. Somebody's actually brought up another one for us, so let's take a look here. There it is. Ben says, in PMP, you mentioned prerequisite hours prior to taking the test. Why is there this criteria? All right, Joe, here it is.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there are. Have you seen? Do you know what the prerequisite hours are?
No, I do not. Not
Right.
right now.
Well, I've
Yeah.
actually got if I just take a look at some of the PMP material. So let me just access this PMP material, and you're going to see that. Hopefully, you'll see that on the screen. Look at this. So
Oh,
this is
there
for
you go.
PMP, and for PMP, look at that. You've got 7,500 hours that are needed leading and directing a project. Now, do you know how long that is in real life?
It's a long time.
Right, it is. It's a huge long time. Or if you've got a bachelor's degree, you've got 4,500 hours. And that again is in leading and directing
Right.
projects. This is not 7,500 hours in being a project analyst. This is 7,500 hours managing a project. And so what a lot of people do is a lot of people will go for this particular exam because this is the certified associate in project management, and this is not going to require as many hours. In fact, it doesn't require as many hours leading a project, but what it still asks for is either 1,500 hours of project experience or 23 hours worth of project management training. Now, of course, we've got that in our library. We've just updated PMP, and I think with that combined with Agile that I refer you to in the in the actual series itself. I'll tell you to go and watch the Agile Fundamentals, and I'll also tell you to go and look at the Organizational Change Management series as well, all part of your study. So all of that combined will give you more than enough minimum hours to be able to sit this. That's the CAPM. It won't give you, however, enough hours to be able to sit this, because this requires a certain number of hours leading a project, not just being in one, but leading one. Why does it ask for that? And I think that was the question that came through, wasn't it?
Sure.
Why does it ask for that? PMP is quite a prestigious certification. And so in order to be, basically what you're doing is you're getting yourself endorsed by the Project Management Institute. And the Project Management Institute want to make sure that they retain a certain standard for all of their professionals, which is understandable. They've got a brand that they want to protect, and they've got an accreditation that they want to protect. And so you have to attain a certain minimum. And you know, there are people in this world, and I'm not one of them, by the way, but there are people in this world that are really, really good at taking tests. And they can study and research for a test. They can go and they can sit down and take a test. They'll get a certificate, but they've never had any real world experience. Then just because you take a test doesn't mean that therefore you know how to manage a project. And so, of course, if you think about this, I want to make sure if I'm hiring a project manager, if I'm bringing somebody in to manage a project for me, especially, I mean, it could potentially be sort of a $1 million, $2 million, $3 million project. If I want somebody to come and manage a project for me, I want to know that not only have they got a certificate, but they've also got experience as well. And that's the reason for that particular requirement, is we want to know that you've got experience. Now, another question that I quite often get asked is, well, why is it reduced if you have got a master's degree or a bachelor's degree? Well, the reason why that's been reduced is because obviously you spent a lot of time then studying and studying theory, and it doesn't actually tell you what your bachelor's degree needs to be in. But the simple fact is that your education level, it's not about, you know, how clever you are, it's about how much you've studied. And I can tell you that it's not necessarily about the fact that you've got the brain the size of a planet. It's about the fact that you've been able to apply yourself and that you've demonstrated that you have applied yourself. But yes, it asks for that because in order to endorse you as a project manager, the PMI want to be completely assured that you actually have the experience to back up your ability to study, and that you are not just studying to pass a test. And by the way, I've got to add this on. Your number of hours that it asks for, or number of years. Were you looking it up on? I saw you looking something up on a calculator. Were you looking that up?
It's about 313 days.
Right. Yeah.
7,500 hours.
Yeah, which is not, you know, it's not a huge amount when you think about it. It is, yeah. It's well, by the time you take out weekends, it's
over a year.
They're looking for just over a year, maybe 2 years worth of experience. But that experience has got to be backed up by somebody signing off that experience as well. It's so your line manager or somebody within your organization needs to sign off that, yes, this person has actually directed a project before, because it's asking you for experience at directing a project. And it's just really, as I say, a verification that, yes, you are a project manager and you're not just somebody who studied for a test and passed it.
There's no doubt, Jo, that that does happen sometimes, but these qualifications, especially for the PNP, is something that they do want to protect the value of that exam certification, and that's how they do it. They say it's for this level of education, or they say it's for this amount of experience. That's what they want to achieve out of it. All right, Jo, well, that brings us to a close for Ask Me Anything today. We are glad that you joined us, of course, and we, of course, are glad that you also joined us here, too. Just because we're ending the show doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stop submitting questions. You can always continue to tweet at AskMeAnything with that hashtag, and that will, of course, bring up the questions for us, and we'll try and get them answered. If you remember, you, of course, can even post them in our forums, and that way we'll check it and make sure that we get answers provided to you as well. So, for IT Pro TV and for Jo Peacock and myself, thank you for joining us, and have a great day.